There are places in America that time forgot. Hidden corners, abandoned towns, and crumbling structures where the past refuses to stay buried. Tonight, we uncover 10 chilling hauntings that you've likely never heard of but might be closer to your backyard than you think. Stay with me, because the deeper we go, the darker these stories become. And you won't believe what we uncover at the end. These are not just stories. They're testimonies from witnesses, chilling local legends, and historical accounts that refuse to fade. If you've ever walked alone at night and felt someone watching you, you'll understand the power of these tales. Imagine a world just beneath the surface of the one you know. A world where shadows flicker in the corner of your eye, where the walls of abandoned buildings still echo with voices long silenced. Tonight, we'll uncover 10 of America's most haunting secrets, stories that refuse to stay buried, even as time marches on. From forgotten towns to cursed bridges, these places hold memories that seem to whisper to anyone who dares to draw near. And here's the thing, they're not always in far-off, remote corners of the country. Some of these places might be in your own backyard, hidden behind a veil of history that you've walked past 100 times. By the time we're done, you'll never look at your quiet street or weekend hiking trail the same way again. Stay with me as we step into the chilling world of America's forgotten hauntings. But be warned, each story gets darker as we go, and the last one will leave you questioning what you thought you knew about the world around you. If you've ever walked alone at night and felt someone watching you, you'll understand the power of these tales. Number 1. The forgotten town of Dudleytown, Connecticut. In the hills of northwestern Connecticut lies a stretch of land known as Dudleytown, a place so steeped in terror that it's been dubbed the Village of the Damned. Today, it's a ghost town, reclaimed by nature. But the stories of what happened here remain, passed down in hushed tones by locals who refuse to venture into its eerie shadows. The Dudleys arrived in the early 1700s, seeking to build a thriving settlement. But almost immediately, something seemed to work against them. Crops failed without explanation. Livestock vanished. People went mad, more than could be attributed to simple hardship. And then came the deaths. A string of violent, unexplainable tragedies followed the family like a dark cloud. By the mid-1800s, the settlement was abandoned. Stories of curses, witchcraft, and unspeakable rituals emerged. Some claimed the Dudley family brought with them a curse tied to a political betrayal back in England. Others whispered that the land itself was tainted, an ancient burial ground best left undisturbed. But here's where the story turns chilling. In the decades since, hikers who ventured into Dudleytown report overwhelming feelings of dread, like an invisible force pushing them out. Shadowy figures dart between the trees, and at night, muffled whispers seem to rise from the earth itself. A group of paranormal investigators once set out to uncover the truth. They filmed themselves wandering through the remains of the town. The footage, never officially released, is rumored to show something unexplainable. Shapes that seem to form in the mist, moving with purpose toward the camera. And one of the investigators, they disappeared that night. No trace was ever found, not even their car, which had been parked near the trailhead. The Dudleytown forest is now off-limits to the public, guarded by private property laws and local warnings. But those who live nearby claim the hauntings continue. Flickering lights in the woods, screams that echo late at night, and a chilling fact: every attempt to rebuild on the land has failed, with construction mysteriously stopping without explanation. Could the land itself be cursed, rejecting anyone who dares to disturb it? Or are the spirits of Dudleytown's past still wandering, waiting for the living to make a mistake? Number 2. The Ghost of Emily's Bridge, Vermont. Nestled in the quiet town of Stowe, Vermont, lies an unassuming wooden structure known as Goldbrook Bridge. To most, it's just another covered bridge, blending seamlessly into the picturesque New England landscape. But to those who know its story, it's something far more chilling. Locals call it Emily's Bridge, and they'll tell you to think twice before crossing it after dark. The legend begins with Emily, a young woman who fell deeply in love with a man her family did not approve of. Determined to defy them, Emily arranged to meet her lover at the bridge late one night. They were to elope, leave behind the small-minded confines of their town, and begin a new life together. But Emily waited and waited. Her lover never came. Heartbroken and humiliated, Emily tied a rope to the bridge's rafters and ended her life that very night. Her lifeless body was found the next morning, swinging in the cold morning mist. But her story didn't end there. They say Emily's sorrow and rage bound her spirit to the bridge, and to this day, she haunts anyone foolish enough to linger there. Visitors describe hearing blood-curdling screams in the dead of night. Screams so loud they echo through the valley. Drivers who cross the bridge report scratches on their cars, as though claws had raked against the paint. Others have felt invisible hands gripping their necks, or a sudden icy chill that seeps into their bones. One witness even claimed to see a shadowy figure appear in their rearview mirror as they drove off, only to vanish when they turned around. One of the most terrifying encounters comes from a paranormal group who conducted an overnight investigation on the bridge. They reported hearing footsteps pacing above them, even though the rafters were too fragile to hold weight. Their audio recordings captured faint sobbing and a single, chilling phrase, "Why did you leave me?" Some members left that night with scratches on their backs, as though Emily herself had reached out in anger. Skeptics often dismiss these claims, suggesting natural explanations. The sounds of animals, the wind howling through the bridge. But those who've experienced it firsthand know better. Emily isn't just a story told to scare teenagers on summer nights. She's a presence, a spirit caught between love and betrayal, unable to move on. So the next time you find yourself in Vermont, standing at the entrance to Goldbrook Bridge, ask yourself, are you ready to face the sorrow of a spirit who never found peace? And if you hear footsteps behind you, whatever you do, don't look back. Number 3. The Abandoned Town of Bod, California. High in the arid mountains of Mono County, California, lies a town frozen in time. Bod was once a thriving gold mining settlement during the late 19th century, a place where fortune seekers flocked to strike it rich. But as the gold dried up, so did the town's prosperity, leaving behind empty streets, dilapidated buildings, and a chilling silence that seems to whisper the town's tragic history. At its peak, Bod was a lawless place. Gunfights erupted over the smallest disputes, and the cemetery filled quickly with those who met violent ends. Its reputation for debauchery and chaos gave rise to the legend that the town itself had been cursed. When the mines finally closed, Bod was abandoned almost overnight, leaving behind a ghost town. Literally. Visitors to Bod report feeling as though they're being watched. Windows that should be empty sometimes reveal fleeting glimpses of faces that vanish when approached. In the schoolhouse, faint sounds of children laughing and desks creaking have been heard, even though no one has sat there for decades. One ranger swore he heard the sound of footsteps trailing him as he locked up for the night. When he turned, there was no one there, but the footprints in the dust were undeniable. And then there's the Bod curse. It's said that anyone who dares to take an artifact from the town, no matter how small, will suffer terrible misfortune. Letters sent back to Bod by regretful visitors fill the shelves of the park office. These letters often describe bizarre accidents, sudden illnesses, and financial ruin, all attributed to the stolen relics. One letter, from a man who took a single nail, detailed how his house burned down a week later. He returned the nail with a desperate plea for forgiveness. The most unsettling part of Bod's story is its silence. Unlike other haunted locations filled with echoes and whispers, Bod's ghostly presence is quiet, patient, and ever watchful. It's as if the town itself is waiting, daring you to uncover its secrets. So, if you ever find yourself walking through Bod's dusty streets, keep your hands in your pockets. And if you feel like you're being followed, don't stop to look. Whatever haunts Bodie prefers to stay unseen, but it's always there. Number 4. The LMP Mansion, Missouri. In the heart of St. Louis, Missouri, stands a mansion that tells a tale of wealth, tragedy, and lingering despair. The LMP Mansion, a sprawling estate once home to the LMP family, now serves as a restaurant and inn. But few who enter leave without feeling the weight of its haunted history. A history etched in sorrow, untimely deaths, and an air of something unshakably wrong. The LMPs were once among the most powerful families in the city, their fortune built on a thriving brewery business. But success was no shield against the darkness that consumed them. It began with the sudden and mysterious death of Frederick LMP, the family's golden child. Devastated, his father, William LMP Sr., retreated into despair, eventually taking his own life in his study, a room that remains one of the mansion's most active paranormal hotspots. But the tragedies didn't stop there. Over the years, 3 more members of the LMP family would meet the same fate, each death echoing through the mansion like a somber refrain. Guests today report hearing the distinct sound of a gunshot, followed by heavy footsteps pacing the hallways, as if the ghosts of the LMPs are reliving their final moments. The mansion itself seems to hold onto its past, almost as if it's alive. In the dining room, staff frequently report hearing the faint clinking of glasses and murmurs of a ghostly dinner party long since past. In the attic, visitors claim to see the shadowy figure of a boy who was rumored to be kept hidden from the public due to a deformity. His presence is often accompanied by the sound of soft, childlike sobbing, as though he's still waiting for someone to find him. One chilling tale involves Room 3, which is said to be the most haunted. Guests report waking up to see a woman in a flowing gown standing at the foot of their bed. She doesn't move or speak. She just stares, her presence heavy with sorrow. And then, without warning, she vanishes. Several guests have fled in the middle of the night, unable to shake the feeling that they were not alone. Paranormal investigators have captured unexplainable phenomena in the LMP Mansion. Shadow figures darting across hallways, sudden temperature drops, and disembodied voices calling out names. One investigator claimed to feel an icy hand grab their shoulder, only to turn and find nothing but empty air. But the most unnerving aspect of the LMP Mansion is its atmosphere. The air feels thick, as if the walls themselves are holding onto the sorrow and despair of those who once lived there. It's a place where the past refuses to let go, where the ghosts of tragedy linger in every corner. So if you ever visit the LMP Mansion, remember, it's not just a building with a history, it's a building with memories. Memories that are all too eager to remind you of what happened within its walls. Number 5. The Bell Witch Cave, Tennessee. In Adams, Tennessee, lies a modest cave that has become the epicenter of one of America's most enduring and chilling hauntings. This is the story of the Bell Witch, a spirit so malevolent that it tormented an entire family for years and left behind a legacy of fear that endures to this day. The tale begins in 1817 when John Bell, a prosperous farmer, noticed strange phenomena on his property. It started with knocking sounds on the walls of his house, escalating to unexplainable footsteps and faint whispers in the dead of night. Soon, the entity made itself known in a far more terrifying way, targeting the Bell family with physical attacks. John's youngest daughter, Betsy, bore the brunt of the spirit's wrath, often waking up with bruises and scratches on her body. The spirit, later dubbed the Bell Witch, didn't confine itself to the house. It seemed to follow the family everywhere, taunting them with disembodied voices that mimicked loved ones, cursed in unfamiliar languages, and laughed with an unsettling, hollow tone. The local community was drawn into the ordeal, with neighbors witnessing the events and even engaging in conversations with the entity. But the true horror lies in the cave located near the Bell property. Locals believe it served as the dwelling place of the Bell Witch, a site where her presence is still felt to this day. Visitors to the cave report hearing whispers that grow louder the deeper they venture, footsteps following them in the darkness, and a chilling sensation that grips their entire body. Flashlights often flicker and die, leaving them in complete darkness, surrounded by the oppressive energy of the cave. The Bell Witch's influence culminated in John Bell's mysterious death. The spirit is said to have claimed responsibility, boasting that she had poisoned him. Even after his death, the haunting didn't stop. To this day, the Bell Witch Cave remains a hotspot for paranormal activity, drawing thrill-seekers and investigators alike. But heed this warning. Those who disrespect the site often find themselves plagued by misfortune. Car accidents, sudden illnesses, and inexplicable tragedies have been reported by visitors who dared to mock the legend. The Bell Witch is a presence that commands fear and respect, and those who enter her domain do so at their own peril. So, if you ever find yourself standing at the entrance of the Bell Witch Cave, ask yourself, are you prepared to face what lies within? Number 6. The Devil's Tramping Ground, North Carolina. In the heart of North Carolina's Chatham County lies a peculiar patch of earth known as the Devil's Tramping Ground. It's not large, only about 40 feet in diameter, but this unremarkable clearing has puzzled locals for centuries. Here, no grass grows, no plants take root, and animals refuse to cross its barren circle. The stories surrounding this eerie anomaly have turned it into one of America's most chilling mysteries. Legend has it that this is the place where the devil himself comes to walk. Night after night, under the cover of darkness, he is said to pace the circle, plotting his wicked deeds. The ground, scorched by his infernal footsteps, remains barren as a testament to his unholy presence. Skeptics might dismiss this as folklore, but those who have spent time there tell a different story. Over the years, brave, or perhaps foolish visitors have camped overnight at the Devil's Tramping Ground, hoping to disprove the legends. They report eerie phenomena that defy explanation. Tents are mysteriously dragged out of the circle while the campers sleep. Belongings left inside the ring are thrown outside by an unseen force. Some awaken to find themselves lying outside the circle, though they swear they fell asleep within its boundaries. One chilling account comes from a man who set up a camera to capture any strange activity overnight. The footage, later reviewed, showed something impossible. His tent shaking violently, though no wind was reported that night. Then came the shadow, an undefined, humanoid figure pacing the perimeter of the circle. The camera abruptly cut out, and when the man retrieved it the next morning, he found deep scorch marks on the ground where his tent had been. Scientists have attempted to study the area, looking for logical explanations for the barren soil. Some speculate it's due to high salt content, others blame chemical contamination. But none of these theories account for the supernatural experiences reported by so many. The absence of wildlife, the unnatural silence, and the overwhelming sense of being watched all point to something far more sinister. Locals have long avoided the site, warning outsiders to do the same. They claim the Devil's Tramping Ground has an energy that seeps into you, an oppressive weight that lingers long after you've left. Some visitors report vivid nightmares for weeks, dreams of fiery landscapes and a relentless shadow following them. Others say their lives took a turn for the worse after visiting. Unexpected tragedies, financial ruin, and unshakable feelings of dread. But perhaps the most unnerving part of the legend is this: the circle has never grown smaller or larger. It remains unchanged, as though time itself refuses to touch it. Whatever force haunts the Devil's Tramping Ground, it seems to be eternal, waiting patiently for the next soul to enter its domain. So if you ever find yourself walking through Chatham County and come across a barren circle of earth, think carefully before you step inside, because once you do, you may never leave the same. Number 7. The Crescent Hotel, Arkansas. In the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas stands the Crescent Hotel, a building whose grand facade hides a deeply unsettling past. Built in 1886, it was once advertised as a luxury resort for the wealthy. But beneath its elegance lies a legacy of death, deception, and lingering spirits. The hotel's most infamous chapter began in the 1930s when a man named Norman Baker purchased the property. Baker was a self-proclaimed doctor with no medical training who turned the hotel into a cancer treatment center. Promising miracle cures, he lured desperate patients from across the country. What they found instead was a house of horrors. Baker's treatments were nothing more than quackery, and countless patients died under his care. Many believe their restless spirits never left. Today, the Crescent Hotel is known as one of the most haunted hotels in America. Guests frequently report seeing apparitions of doctors and nurses roaming the halls. In room 218, where a construction worker died during the hotel's original construction, visitors describe hearing heavy footsteps and doors slamming shut on their own. Some even claim to have seen the ghostly figure of a man falling from the ceiling, replaying his tragic end. The basement, once used as Baker's morgue, is perhaps the most chilling part of the hotel. Paranormal investigators have captured unexplainable cold spots, ghostly voices, and even faint cries of pain echoing through the halls. One former employee recalled opening a drawer in the morgue and finding it inexplicably filled with ice, despite the room being warm. The faint outline of a handprint was visible on the frosted surface. One guest, staying in the hotel for a weekend retreat, claimed she woke up in the middle of the night to see a nurse standing over her bed, holding a tray of surgical tools. The nurse's face was expressionless, her eyes hollow. When the guest screamed, the figure vanished into thin air. Despite its dark history, the Crescent Hotel has become a hotspot for thrill seekers and paranormal enthusiasts. But for those who've experienced its hauntings firsthand, it's clear the spirits of the past are still very much alive, trapped in a place they can never leave. If you ever find yourself wandering the halls of the Crescent Hotel, remember, you're not alone. The ghosts of its tragic past may be closer than you think. Number 8. The Myrtles Plantation, Louisiana. In the quiet town of St. Francisville, Louisiana, stands the Myrtles Plantation, a stately antebellum home with a haunting reputation that spans centuries. Dubbed one of America's most haunted houses, this plantation carries the weight of a dark and violent past, one that seems to linger in every creak of the floorboards and every whisper of the wind through the Spanish moss-draped trees. Built in 1796, the Myrtles Plantation was a place of grandeur and wealth. But behind its beauty lies a history of betrayal, tragedy, and untimely deaths. The most enduring legend is that of Chloe, a slave who worked in the household and is said to have been involved in a tragic poisoning. According to the story, Chloe was forced into an affair with the plantation's owner, Judge Woodruff. When she fell out of favor, she was punished by having her ear cut off. Seeking revenge, or perhaps redemption, Chloe allegedly baked a poisoned cake intended for the master and his family. But the plan backfired. The judge's wife and 2 young daughters ate the cake and succumbed to its effects. Whether Chloe acted out of malice or desperation, she was ultimately hanged by her fellow slaves and left to die on the plantation grounds. Her restless spirit is said to remain, wandering the halls and grounds of the Myrtles. Visitors and staff alike report sightings of a woman in a green turban, believed to be Chloe, appearing at the foot of beds or in the reflection of mirrors. One mirror in particular, located in the main hallway, is a focal point of paranormal activity. Despite regular cleaning, handprints and smudges appear on the glass, as though someone or something is trapped within. But Chloe isn't the only ghost said to haunt the Myrtles Plantation. There are accounts of phantom children playing on the veranda, their laughter echoing through the night. A former owner, William Winter, is said to roam the house as well, endlessly replaying the moment of his death. He was shot on the front porch and staggered inside, managing to climb the stairs before collapsing. Visitors claim to hear his footsteps climbing the staircase, only to stop abruptly at the 17th step, the place where he is said to have died. In the dining room, the faint sound of music sometimes drifts through the air, accompanied by the clinking of glasses and murmurs of a dinner party long since ended. Lights flicker, objects move on their own, and cold spots manifest without warning, even on the hottest summer days. One particularly unsettling account comes from a guest who stayed overnight. She woke to find the room ice cold, despite the heater being on. As she reached for her phone, she noticed the outline of a figure standing in the corner of the room, just outside the reach of the light. She froze, unable to move, until the figure dissolved into the darkness. The Myrtles Plantation has been the subject of countless investigations, documentaries, and reports. But despite all the attention, its mysteries remain unsolved. For those who visit, it's not a question of if they'll encounter something unexplainable, but when. So if you ever find yourself on the front steps of the Myrtles Plantation, take a moment to listen. You might hear the faint laughter of children, the mournful cry of a woman, or the sound of footsteps that stop, but never leave. Number 9. The Winchester Mystery House, California. In San Jose, California, stands one of the most bizarre and enigmatic mansions in the world, the Winchester Mystery House. Spanning over 24,000 square feet with more than 160 rooms, this labyrinthine estate is a marvel of architectural oddities and chilling lore. But what's most intriguing about this house isn't just its size or design. It's the woman who built it and the reason why she never stopped. Sarah Winchester, heiress to the Winchester rifle fortune, began construction on the house in 1884 after the sudden deaths of her husband and infant daughter. Stricken with grief and guilt, Sarah turned to a medium, who allegedly told her she was cursed by the spirits of those killed by Winchester rifles. To appease them, she was instructed to build a home, one that would never be finished. For the next 38 years, Sarah oversaw non-stop construction. Workers labored day and night, adding rooms, staircases, and hallways in a seemingly random fashion. Some stairs lead to ceilings, doors open into walls, and windows peer into other rooms. The house is a maze designed to confuse and trap spirits, keeping them from finding Sarah. Visitors to the Winchester Mystery House report feeling an overwhelming sense of disorientation, as though the house itself is alive. Cold spots appear without explanation, and some claim to hear faint whispers echoing through the endless hallways. In the seance room, where Sarah is said to have communed with spirits, investigators have captured strange electromagnetic readings and unexplainable audio phenomena. One chilling account comes from a caretaker who worked there in the 1970s. While walking through the halls late at night, he heard the distinct sound of footsteps behind him. When he turned, no one was there, but the footsteps didn't stop. They seemed to grow louder, following him until he fled the house. Another tale involves the third-floor bedroom where Sarah passed away. Guests who stay overnight in the mansion describe waking up to see a shadowy figure standing at the foot of their bed, watching them with an intensity that feels almost unbearable. One guest swore they heard the figure whisper her name before disappearing into the darkness. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the Winchester Mystery House is its unending sense of motion. Doors creak as though someone is opening them. Shadows dart just out of sight, and the house itself seems to shift, as though it's growing and changing even now. For those who visit, the Winchester Mystery House isn't just a tourist attraction. It's a living testament to fear, guilt, and the belief that some spirits can never be silenced. Number 10. The USS Hornet, California. In the bustling port city of Alameda, California, floats an artifact of history and heroism. The USS Hornet, a World War II-era aircraft carrier turned museum. A symbol of American resilience and naval prowess, the Hornet played a pivotal role in the Pacific Theater, launching airstrikes and rescuing downed pilots. But beneath its storied legacy lies a darker, quieter truth, a haunting that has gripped the ship since it was decommissioned. The Hornet's history is marked by tragedy. Over 300 sailors lost their lives aboard the ship, not only in battle but also through accidents and suicides. It is said that their spirits remain, wandering the ship's labyrinthine corridors, replaying the moments that led to their untimely deaths. Visitors to the USS Hornet report an unsettling sense of being watched, even when they are alone. Footsteps echo through empty hallways, and faint voices call out names in the stillness. Tour guides have heard the sound of heavy doors creaking open and slamming shut, only to find nothing disturbed upon investigation. In the ship's sickbay, the faint hum of medical equipment and whispered conversations can sometimes be heard, as though the spirits of injured sailors are still seeking treatment. One of the most chilling areas of the Hornet is the engine room, a cramped and claustrophobic space deep within the ship. Numerous visitors have reported hearing metallic banging and muffled screams, as though someone is trapped and calling for help. One former naval officer, visiting the Hornet on a private tour, claimed to feel a hand grip his shoulder while exploring the engine room. When he turned, there was no one there, but the air around him was ice cold. In the crew quarters, bed sheets have been found rumpled and indented, as though someone had just lain down. Paranormal investigators have captured audio recordings of indistinct chatter and even faint laughter, as though the ship's crew is still gathered for camaraderie long after their service ended. One particularly unsettling recording captured the words, "We're still here." The Hornet's flight deck, where so many lives were saved and lost, is another hotspot for activity. Shadows move across the deck in the moonlight, and several visitors have reported seeing figures dressed in naval uniforms standing near the edge, only to vanish when approached. One night, a security guard claimed to see a pilot in full flight gear walking toward one of the planes. The guard called out, thinking it was part of a reenactment, but the figure disappeared before reaching the aircraft. Perhaps the most harrowing story comes from a young couple who attended an overnight event aboard the Hornet. Around midnight, they ventured into the lower levels of the ship, armed with only a flashlight. As they explored, the light flickered and died, leaving them in total darkness. Moments later, they heard the unmistakable sound of boots marching in unison, growing louder and louder as if an entire platoon were advancing toward them. Terrified, they scrambled back to the upper deck, but when they reviewed their audio recordings later, they discovered faint voices among the marching. A chorus of whispers repeating the words, "This is our ship, the USS Hornet, now a museum open to the public," serves as a reminder of the sacrifices made during wartime. But for those who dare to step aboard, it's also a chilling encounter with the past, where the living and the dead coexist in the shadowy corridors of a vessel that refuses to let go of its history. If you ever find yourself walking the decks of the Hornet, listen closely. The echoes you hear might not just be the creaks of an aging ship. They might be the voices of sailors who never truly left. These 10 stories remind us that history is never truly forgotten. The places we walk, the buildings we enter, and the waters we cross all hold echoes of the past. Echoes that refuse to fade. Whether it's the cursed soil of North Carolina, the haunted halls of a Missouri mansion, or the restless spirits aboard a mighty ship, these hauntings are more than stories. They are warnings, reminders that the past is never as far away as it seems. Which of these tales spoke to you the most? Which one will you think about the next time you find yourself alone in the dark? These forgotten hauntings remind us that the past is never truly gone. It lingers, watching, waiting. Which story haunted you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more chilling tales. Let us know in the comments below, and if you're brave enough to hear more stories like these, subscribe and join us again as we uncover the world's most haunting secrets. Until then, sleep well,